The text message came at 11:47 p.m., and I knew before I opened it that my life was about to end. Not the message itself, just 3 words from Diego. I'm sorry, amor. But what it meant. In 3 years of marriage to a man who claimed he'd left the cartel world behind, I'd learned to read the spaces between words, the silences that screamed. And this message, sent from a blocked number in the middle of the night when he should have been at a business dinner, was a scream. I was standing in our small kitchen in Medellin, surrounded by unpaid bills and the takeout containers from dinner I'd eaten alone, when my phone rang. Not Diego's number. A hospital. Señora Reyes, your husband has been brought to our emergency department. You should come now. The rain was coming down in sheets, that kind of Medellin rain that sounds like rice hitting metal, and the cab driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror like he knew. Like everyone in this city always knew when death had touched someone. The streets blurred past in ribbons of red and gold light, and I watched my reflection in the window. White-faced, hollow-eyed, already a widow, even if no one had said the words yet. The hospital smelled like disinfectant trying to cover blood and fear. A doctor met me in a hallway painted institutional green, and his face told me everything before his mouth opened. I'm sorry, he said. Multiple gunshot wounds. He was deceased when he arrived. Deceased. Such a clinical word for the man who used to bring me coffee in bed, who danced with me in our tiny living room to songs that made him nostalgic for a childhood I'd never asked about. Deceased for the man whose hands had been steady when he left the apartment earlier. So steady, I should have known he'd already made peace with whatever was coming. They took me to a room that was cold and sterile, and Diego lay on a metal table covered to his chest, with a white sheet that wasn't quite white anymore. His face was peaceful, unmarked, and I realized with sick clarity that whoever killed him had wanted him to see their faces, had made it personal. I nodded confirmation, because that's what they needed. Then came the questions from a police officer who already knew I had no answers. Where had he been going? I don't know. Who were his associates? I don't know. Had there been threats? I don't know. The truth was radioactive. The truth was that I'd married a man I didn't know, had spent 3 years in willful blindness, had taken the comfortable apartment and the nice dinners, and told myself his import-export business was legitimate because the alternative was too terrifying. They sent me home eventually, back to our apartment where his jacket still hung over a chair, and the life we'd built revealed itself as constructed on quicksand. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch and watched the rain and waited, because Diego's world didn't let widows walk away clean. His world came for you. It always came for you. The knock came at 4 a.m, soft and polite, the kind of knock that says we know you're awake. I opened the door because not opening it would have been worse. 3 men stood in the hallway, and I recognized the type even if I didn't recognize their faces. Expensive clothes cut to hide weapons. Calm eyes that had seen too much violence to be shocked by more. The one in front was older, maybe 50, with silver in his hair and a scar that ran from his left eye to his jaw. Señora Reyes, he said, and his voice was soft, almost apologetic. We need to talk about your husband's business. May we come in? It wasn't a question. They filed past me into my small living room, and I left the door open because closed doors meant you'd accepted what was happening. The scarred man sat in Diego's chair. The other 2 stood, flanking the doorway. Professional. Practiced. We're looking for something that belongs to us, the man said. Something your husband took. We believe you know where it is. My throat was dry. I don't know anything about Diego's business. He smiled, and it didn't reach his eyes. Señora, please, don't insult our intelligence. Diego was many things, but careless wasn't one of them. He loved you, which means he told you. I thought about Diego's last words, spoken just before he left for that final meeting. The location is in a place only you would think to check. Think about where we started. Think about what I gave you first. I don't know, I said again, and meant it, because Diego's cryptic instructions made no sense, and I couldn't solve his riddles with a gun implied in every word this man spoke. The scarred man sighed like I'd disappointed him. He pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke rapid Spanish too quiet for me to catch. Then he stood. "You're coming with us," he said, "until your memory improves." I should have screamed, should have run. But I was tired, and I was grieving, and some part of me had been waiting for this moment since the day I married Diego. Some part of me had always known his world would swallow me whole. They were gentle as they led me out, one man on each side. No handcuffs, no guns visible, just the implied threat of what would happen if I made a scene. My neighbors' doors stayed closed. In Medellin, you learned not to see certain things. The car was black, expensive, windows tinted dark. They put me in the back seat between two men who smelled like cigarettes and cologne. The scarred man sat in front, phone to his ear, speaking in a low voice. We drove through the city as dawn started to break, purple and gold lights spilling over the mountains, and I watched my life disappear through tinted glass. The streets gave way to highway to mountain roads, and finally we turned onto a private drive that wound up through coffee plantations to a house that sprawled like a small hotel. White walls, terracotta roof, gardens that probably cost more to maintain than I'd earned in my entire life. Rich, people's fortress, cartel money's monument. They took me inside through a side entrance, upstairs, down a hallway lined with art that looked original and expensive. The room they put me in was beautiful. King bed with white linens, French doors opening onto a balcony, furniture that matched in a way furniture in real people's houses never did. "Make yourself comfortable," the scarred man said. "Someone will bring food. We'll talk more when you've had time to think." The door closed. The lock clicked. I was alone in a gilded cage, and through the French doors I could see mountains and sky, and the sprawl of Medellin below, like a wound bleeding light. I sat on the bed because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. Thought about Diego lying cold in the hospital morgue. Thought about the money he'd hidden somewhere I was supposed to understand. Wondered if this was how it ended, locked in a beautiful room, waiting for dangerous men to decide I was no longer useful. The sun climbed higher. Someone brought coffee and bread, left it without speaking. I wasn't hungry, but I drank the coffee because shock does strange things to the body, and routine becomes a lifeline. I explored the room like you'd explore a cell. Windows, locked. Balcony, 30-foot drop to stone patio. Bathroom, expensive tile, no useful weapons. I was trapped, professionally trapped by people who'd done this before. Evening came, painting the sky orange and purple, and I heard voices in the hallway. The door opened, and a new man entered, and everything in my chest seized up because I recognized him. Not his name, not his history, but his type. This was Diego's world given human form. He was tall, built like he spent serious time in the gym, with dark hair and darker eyes, and a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so carefully blank. He wore black jeans and a black shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and there was a tattoo on his left forearm I couldn't quite see. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, studying me, and I saw him take in my rumpled clothes, my tear-tracked face, my rigid posture. Then he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "Catalina," he said, and his voice was different from the scarred man's. Rougher. Tired. "My name is Mateo. I worked for your husband." Past tense. Worked, not work. I stood because sitting felt too vulnerable. "Are you here to interrogate me too?" He almost smiled. Almost. "No, I'm here to get you out." That landed like a punch. I stared at him, trying to read deception in his face, trying to understand the angle. "Why would you help me?" "Because Diego asked me to," he said, and pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "If anything happens to me, keep her safe." Those were his instructions. Last thing he ever told me. He held out the paper, and I took it with shaking hands. It was Diego's handwriting, scrawled and quick. "Mateo, if you're reading this, I'm already gone. Catalina knows nothing. She's innocent. Whatever comes next, whatever they think she knows, protect her. She's everything." The paper crumpled in my grip. He knew, I whispered. He knew they'd come for me. Mateo nodded. He knew a lot of things, including that the men who took you aren't the only ones looking for that money, including that this whole thing is bigger than a missing shipment or a hidden account. He moved closer, voice dropping. You need to trust me. I know that's asking a lot, but right now I'm the only thing standing between you and people who won't be as patient as Carlos downstairs. Carlos. The scarred man had a name. It didn't make him less terrifying. How do I know you're not lying? I asked. How do I know this isn't another way to get me to talk? Mateo's jaw tightened. You don't. But Diego trusted me for 15 years, and that has to count for something. He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. Diego and him, younger, laughing in front of a building I didn't recognize. Brothers in everything but blood. He saved my life twice. I owed him. Now I owe you. I wanted to believe him. Wanted it desperately. Because the alternative was that I was completely alone in a house full of killers, with no one coming to save me. If you worked for him, I said slowly, then you know about the money. I know there is money, Mateo corrected. I know Diego moved it before he died. I know he left you instructions. He paused. And I know he did it because you're not who they think you are. That stopped me cold. What? Mateo's expression shifted, something like respect entering it. Diego didn't just marry you because he loved you, Catalina. He married you because you're Ana Catalina Ospina. Your father was Hector Ospina. The name hit me like cold water. I hadn't heard it in years, had buried it when I left my hometown, had taken my mother's maiden name and walked away from that legacy. My father died when I was 10, I said quietly. I have nothing to do with his world. Your father, Mateo said, was the accountant for the Medellin Confederation. The only man who knew where every dollar was buried, every account was hidden, every investment was made. When he died, that knowledge died with him. Or so everyone thought. He stepped closer. Diego married the daughter of a legend, and if he hid money somewhere only you would find it, he didn't just hide it. He encrypted it. Your father's methods, your father's codes. The room spun. I sat down hard on the bed. I don't know my father's codes. I was a child. But you know how he thought, Mateo pressed. You know his stories, his habits, the places he valued. Diego was betting that you'd figure it out if you needed to. And Catalina? His voice went harder. You need to? Because the money everyone's looking for? It's not just cartel funds. It's evidence. Names, transactions, roots. Diego was building a case to take down half the operations in Colombia. That's why they killed him. That's why they took you. And that's why we need to find it before they do. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to think through the exhaustion and fear. My father. I'd spent 20 years trying to forget him, trying to be someone other than the daughter of a man whose ledgers had funded murder and trafficking and corruption. My mother had moved us to Bogota after he died, changed our names, started over. I'd built a whole life pretending that legacy didn't exist. And Diego had known who I was, what I came from, and had married me anyway. Or maybe because of it. Where we started? I said slowly, working through Diego's words. He said the location was where we started. Think about what he gave me first. Mateo watched me carefully. Where did you meet? University. I was studying literature. He was auditing a philosophy course. I closed my eyes, remembering. He gave me a book, first week, said it reminded him of me. What book? I could see it in my mind, battered paperback with a cracked spine. 100 Years of Solitude, Garcia Marquez. He said every Colombian should read it, but that I'd understand it differently. Mateo's eyes sharpened. Do you still have it? It's at the apartment. Then that's where we start, he said, and pulled out his phone. I can get us out of here, but it has to be tonight. Carlos is planning to move you tomorrow, somewhere I can't follow. somewhere Diego's instructions don't reach. He typed something, then looked at me again. There's a woman named Rosa who works here. Cook, housekeeper. She owes Diego a debt. She'll help, but we need to move in 2 hours when the guard shift changes. My heart was hammering. And if we get caught? Then we're both dead, Mateo said flatly. Carlos doesn't tolerate betrayal, and I've been walking a line since the moment I vouched for you. But staying here means Carlos eventually decides you're lying, and then... He didn't finish. Didn't need to. I'd grown up in this world, even if I'd tried to leave it behind. I knew what happened to people who couldn't provide what the cartels wanted. Okay, I said, and my voice only shook a little. Tell me what to do. Mateo's shoulders relaxed fractionally. Pack light, wear dark clothes if you have them, comfortable shoes. At 11, Rosa will come with your dinner. She'll leave the door unlocked. Count to 300, then leave the room and turn right. Third door on the left is a service staircase. I'll meet you at the bottom. He moved toward the door, then paused. Catalina, Diego was my friend, my brother. Whatever he was building, whatever he was trying to do, it got him killed. But he believed in it. Believed it was worth dying for. And he believed you were strong enough to finish it. He left before I could respond, and I was alone again with my racing thoughts and the weight of a dead husband's expectations. I went through the closet and found clothes that must have belonged to someone else, someone who lived in this house. Dark jeans, a black sweater. They fit well enough. I put them on, left my own clothes folded on the bed like I might come back for them. The shoes were too big, but I stuffed tissue in the toes the way my mother had taught me when we couldn't afford new ones. The hours crawled. I sat on the bed and thought about my father. Tried to remember his face beyond the photograph my mother kept hidden in a box. He'd been a quiet man, precise, the kind who noticed when things didn't add up. He'd taught me numbers like other fathers taught sports, had shown me how patterns emerged if you looked long enough. He'd died in a car accident when I was 10, and it was only years later I understood that accidents in that world were rarely accidental. Diego had known who my father was. Had sought me out, probably. Had married me with a plan already forming. The betrayal should have hurt more, but I was too tired for rage. The question was whether he'd loved me despite the plan or because of it, and I'd never get to ask him now. The knock came at exactly 11. An older woman with graying hair and tired eyes brought a tray of food, set it on the desk without meeting my gaze. But her hand brushed the doorknob as she left, and I heard no click of a lock. Rosa. I waited, counting in my head the way my father had taught me when I couldn't sleep. 1 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. At 300, I stood. The hallway was empty, dim, lit by sconces that cast more shadow than light. I moved right, counting doors. Third on the left opened onto stairs that spiraled down, narrow and steep. I took them carefully, one hand on the wall, trying not to think about what happened if I was wrong, if this was a test, if Mateo was just another player in a game I didn't understand. The bottom opened into a kitchen, industrial and spotless. Rosa was there, washing dishes with methodical focus. She didn't look at me, just tilted her head toward a door half hidden behind a pantry shelf. I slipped through it into night air that smelled like coffee and jasmine. Mateo materialized from the shadows, a hand on my elbow guiding me toward the tree line. Stay close, he murmured. Don't run unless I run. We moved through darkness, and I could hear voices from the house, laughter, the clink of glasses. Normal sounds masking terrible things. The fence was tall, chain link topped with razor wire, but Mateo led me to a section where the wire had been cut, the links pulled back just enough for a body to slide through. You first, he whispered. I crawled through, feeling metal scrape my back even through the sweater. Mateo followed, and then we were running, low and fast through coffee plants that grabbed at our clothes. A car was hidden on a service road, old sedan that blended into the background. Mateo had the engine running before I got my door closed, and we were moving, no headlights, navigating by moonlight and memory. Where are we going? I asked when I could breathe again. Your apartment. Get the book. Get out. Carlos will have men there, but they won't expect us for a few more hours. He glanced at me. After that, we disappear until we figure out what Diego left you. The drive back into the city felt like descending into a mouth full of teeth. Medellin at night was beautiful and deadly, lights spreading like a net. Mateo took side streets, doubled back twice, watching mirrors. We parked 3 blocks from my building and approached on foot. The street was quiet, but there was a car idled near the entrance with 2 men inside. Back entrance, Mateo said, and we circled around to the alley where residents took out trash. The service door was locked, but Mateo had it open in 30 seconds. We took the stairs to the 3rd floor, and I stood outside my own door with shaking hands. "Give me your key," Mateo said. He opened it slowly, gun appearing in his hand from nowhere, and cleared the apartment with professional efficiency. "We have maybe 5 minutes," he said. "Find the book." It was in the bedroom, on the shelf where I kept things that mattered. The cover was more faded than I remembered, pages yellowed. I grabbed it, and Mateo hustled me toward the door, but I stopped. "Wait, one more thing." I went to the kitchen, to the drawer where we kept batteries and old receipts and the detritus of daily life. Underneath it all was a photograph of our wedding day. Diego in a suit, me in white, both of us smiling like we believed in happily ever after. I took it. We were back in the stairwell when I heard voices above us, doors opening. Someone had noticed I was gone. Mateo grabbed my hand and we ran, taking stairs 3 at a time, bursting into the alley just as shouts erupted from my apartment. The car was where we'd left it. Mateo drove like he was being chased, which we were, cutting through traffic and running lights until the city blurred around us. We ended up at a motel on the edge of town, the kind that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Mateo paid cash, got us a room with peeling wallpaper and a bed that sagged in the middle. He locked the door, checked the window, then finally let himself breathe. "We're okay," he said. "For now." I sat on the bed and opened the book. Pages fell open to spots Diego had marked with pen, passages underlined. But there, tucked inside the back cover, was a photograph I'd never seen before. My father and a young Diego, maybe 20 years ago. They were standing in front of a building with ornate doors, and on the back someone had written, "El Deposito Central, Box 1847. "The Central Depository," Mateo said, reading over my shoulder. "It's a bank, old one, downtown. They have safety deposit boxes that date back 50 years. I stared at the numbers. 1847. That's the year Garcia Marquez was born. Mateo smiled, and it was the first real smile I'd seen from him. "Your father taught you well." But I was looking at something else now, at the inscription on the title page of the book. Diego's handwriting, dated 3 years ago. "For Catalina, may you always find your way home." And underneath, so small I almost missed it, "The key is where love begins." "What does that mean?" Mateo asked. I closed my eyes, thinking, where love begins. My mind went back to our first date, the restaurant near the university, then further back, to the cathedral where we were married. But no, Diego wasn't sentimental that way. He was practical, strategic. The key is where love begins. "The apartment?" I said slowly. "When we moved in, Diego gave me a charm bracelet, said it was to celebrate our first home together. It had a key charm on it." Mateo straightened. "Where is it?" "Jewelry box, bedroom." Where we'd just been, where Carlos's men were now searching. "Mierda," Mateo said softly. Then, Okay, we can work with this. They're looking for evidence of where you went, not for jewelry. It'll take them time to search everything properly." He pulled out his phone. "I know someone who can get into the building, retrieve the bracelet without being seen." "Can you trust them?" I asked. "Right now?" Mateo met my eyes. "I don't trust anyone except you, but I don't have a choice." He made the call, rapid Spanish, lots of numbers and timing. When he hung up, he looked exhausted. 3 hours. My contact will get the bracelet and meet us at dawn near the botanical garden. 3 hours felt like 3 years. We sat in that dingy motel room, and I read through the passages Diego had marked in the book. Love and violence, magic and corruption, history repeating in cycles. Macondo and Medellin weren't so different when you stripped away the metaphor. Mateo cleaned his gun, checked his phone, stared at the wall. Finally, he spoke. Diego was trying to get out. You need to know that. The last 6 months, he was building a case, documenting everything, trying to cut a deal with prosecutors. He wanted witness protection for both of you. I looked up from the book. Why didn't he tell me? Because knowing made you a target, Mateo said, and because he wasn't sure he'd survive long enough to follow through. Men like Diego, men like me, we don't get to just walk away. The world we're in has teeth. You're helping me walk away, I pointed out. He was quiet for a long moment. Maybe. Or maybe I'm helping you finish what he started. Those files, that evidence, it's not just about money. It's about burning the whole system down. Everyone who profited from the violence, everyone who looked away, everyone who enabled it. Diego wanted to be the match. Maybe you're supposed to be the gasoline. The weight of that settled over me like a shroud. I'd spent my whole life trying to escape my father's legacy, and now my husband's was pulling me back in. And if I don't want that? I asked. If I just want to take the money and disappear? Mateo shrugged. Then that's your choice. I'll help you either way. But Catalina? He looked at me. Directly? Diego died believing you'd choose the hard thing, the right thing. That's why he married you. Not because of your father. Because of who you are. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through cheap curtains. Mateo's phone buzzed, and he read the message, nodded. We're on. The botanical garden was quiet at this hour. Just workers preparing for opening, and joggers getting their miles in before the heat. We met Mateo's contact near the orchid house, a thin man with nervous eyes who handed over a plastic bag without speaking. Inside was my jewelry box, and inside that, the charm bracelet. The key charm was hollow. Mateo twisted it, and a piece of paper fell out, rolled tight. Numbers, account numbers, coordinates, access codes, and a note in Diego's hand, for when you're ready to fight. I held it all in my palm, feeling the weight of decisions I hadn't chosen but couldn't escape. The bank opens at 9, Mateo said. We go now. We beat Carlos there. Get the files. Get gone. I nodded. We drove downtown in morning traffic, just 2 more people in a city of millions trying to get through another day. The Deposito Central was old stone and brass, the kind of building that predated the modern towers around it. Inside smelled like paper and time. Mateo stayed near the door while I approached the clerk. Gave my name, my real name, Ana Catalina Ospina, and the box number. She checked records, asked for ID, and I held my breath because I'd changed my name years ago. But she nodded, led me to a private room, and returned with a metal box that looked like it weighed 50 pounds. Take your time, she said, and left me alone. I opened it. Files, dozens of them, organized with my father's meticulous precision. Financial records going back 30 years. Names I recognized from news reports and history books. Politicians, businessmen, police chiefs. Dollar amounts that made my vision blur. And underneath it all, a letter addressed to me in my father's handwriting. Mi querida Catalina, if you're reading this, I am gone. I hope you never have to open this box. I hope you live a normal life, far from the work I've done. But if the world has pulled you back, if you've discovered what I truly did, then you need to understand. I kept these records because I believed someday they would matter. Someday someone would be brave enough to use them. I thought it might be me. Perhaps it is you. Everything here is verified, documented, traceable. It is enough to destroy the system I helped build. Enough to bring justice, if there is such a thing. I know what I did was wrong. I know I enabled terrible things in the name of survival, of providing for you and your mother. That is my sin to carry. But you, Mija, you are not your father. You can choose differently. You can be brave in ways I was not. Whatever you decide, know that I loved you. That every calculation I made, every compromise, was done so you might have a chance at a better life. Forgive me. If you can. Papa? I sat there with tears streaming down my face, and I understood finally what Diego had known, what he'd been trying to tell me. This wasn't just about money or evidence. This was about breaking a cycle, about being the daughter my father wished he'd been brave enough to raise. Mateo knocked softly. "Catalina, we need to go." I wiped my eyes, gathered the files. They fit in a messenger bag the bank provided. We walked out into morning sunshine, and Mateo put a hand on my shoulder. "What do you want to do?" he asked. I thought about Diego, about my father, about all the people who'd been destroyed by this system, about wives who'd lost husbands, children who'd lost parents, communities torn apart by violence funded by the money in these ledgers. "I want to give these to the prosecutors," I said. "Everything, all of it, and then I want to testify." Mateo smiled, fierce and proud. "Diego would be proud of you." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it for everyone else." We drove to the prosecutor's office downtown, and I walked in with a bag full of evidence that would rewrite Colombian history. The prosecutor was a woman named Elena Marquez, mid-40s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She listened to my story, looked through the files, and when she looked up, there was something like hope in her face. "This is enough," she said. "More than enough. With your testimony, we can bring charges against 40 people, maybe more. But Señora Reyes, you understand what you're risking?" I understood. Witness protection meant giving up everything, meant living in shadows, meant always looking over my shoulder. It meant Diego's death would not be avenged, but used, transformed into something that might actually matter. "I understand," I said. "When do we start?" The process took weeks. Depositions, documentation, verification. They moved me to a safe house outside the city, and Mateo came with me because by then, he was as deep in it as I was. We lived in a small house with thick walls and guards at the gates, and we went through Diego's evidence piece by piece, building the case that would tear down an empire. At night, when the work was done, we'd sit on the porch and watch the mountains turn purple in the sunset. "What will you do?" I asked him once. "After this is over?" Mateo was quiet for a long time. "Diego wanted me to keep you safe. That's not done just because the trial ends." "I'm not asking what Diego wanted," I said. "I'm asking what you want." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something in his eyes that made my breath catch. Not pity, not duty. Something warmer, more dangerous. "I want," he said slowly, "to see who you become when you're not running from your past or living in someone else's shadow. I want to be there for that." It wasn't a declaration of love. It was something more honest, a promise of presence, of witnessing, of staying. The trial lasted 3 months and made international headlines. I testified for 6 days, walked prosecutors through my father's files, explained the system piece by piece. The courtroom was packed with reporters and families of victims and defendants who stared at me with murder in their eyes. But I kept talking, kept explaining, kept pulling back the curtain on 30 years of corruption. In the end, 37 people were convicted, prison sentences that added up to centuries. Assets seized, networks dismantled, a generation of cartel leadership destroyed. It wouldn't end the drug trade, nothing would, but it broke the back of the organization that had ruled Medellin for decades. They gave me a new name, new identity, relocated me to a city I won't name in a country I won't specify. Mateo came too, under his own new identity, and we built something small and quiet together. Not marriage, not yet, just a life. I think about Diego sometimes, about whether he knew how it would all unfold, whether he planned for Mateo and me, or whether that was just the universe's way of saying nothing is ever completely tragic. I think about my father, about his letter, about the weight of legacy and choice. Mostly, I think about the woman who opened that bank box and decided to fight instead of run. She was braver than I knew, stronger than I gave her credit for. And she's the reason I can sleep at night, can walk through markets without constantly checking over my shoulder. can imagine a future that isn't defined by other people's violence. The files are sealed now, buried in government vaults. Diego's evidence and my father's records, together at last. A chronicle of bloodshed that became, finally, a roadmap to justice. It's not a happy ending. Those don't exist in this world, but it's an ending I can live with. And on the porch of our small house in our unnamed city, with Mateo beside me and the sunset painting everything gold, I think that might be enough. That might be exactly enough. So that's the story of how a widow became the woman they should have feared all along. How a daughter inherited her father's ledgers and her husband's courage and decided that some legacies are worth keeping and others are worth burning to the ground. How love and violence and justice tangled together in the mountains above Medellin, and how one woman chose to be the match that lit it all on fire. Thanks for listening to this one. If you enjoyed Catalina's story, hit that like button and drop a comment letting me know what kind of story you'd like to hear next. Should I do more cartel thrillers? Maybe something set in a different dangerous world? Let me know. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've got some wild ones coming up. Until next time, stay safe out there.